So let's step along. Michael, any questions or comments coming from?
Yeah, we have had a couple of questions. Omni's just answering those, and we felt it best not to interrupt you unless it was necessary.
Okay, Amandeep, any that good to answer them directly? Any that fit into what we've talked about so far that would add to the conversation? Or are they kind of technical?
They're more technical. So, but
okay.
Yeah, I was more concerned about the RH question, which was basically maintaining RHs that has to be instantaneous over the period of time. So that's has been addressed because CSA only recommends to maintain RH to certain levels. That's for the designers to design the system to make sure that you're able to meet those RH levels during that period. And it's expected that the building or the spaces are always maintained within those ranges that CSA recommended.
Okay, perfect. So then let's get into anesthetic gas recovery, and we are particularly intrigued about this because of the greenhouse gas emissions implications of anesthetic gases. And again, we're delighted to have Class 1 working with us, and we got a few of their folks on the line today to see how this all fits together, but we're delighted to have Marion and Craig and Mina ready to kind of speak to the content, and we spent a bit of time with them figuring out the story that we felt that people would like to hear as you evaluate whether this is technology that should be incorporated now or in your longer term planning around your operating room system upgrades. So if we run through, and Marion, maybe could you just give us we'll come back to this at the end, give us a quick overview of Class 1 and Atlas Copco? You're on mute at the moment, Marion.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so as some of you may know, Class 1 is a major medical gas manufacturer for Canada, and has been recently acquired by Atlas Copco, giving us a lot of muscle in the marketplace in terms of distribution, logistics, parts, and materials. And also research, I might add, especially for something like HDR in terms of some of the chemical engineering muscle behind that. Craig, do you have anything else that you can add here? Yeah. I think that's pretty good background there. I think
that
most
is.
Of these people
so which of you wants to speak to the big issue here? Why is this such a big problem? Where does it stand? What's the government saying about it, and so on? So give us a bit of an overview of why this is such nasty stuff.
Marian, do you want me to take care of this?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This is Mina. Halogenated anesthetics, usually without anything, they went to the atmosphere. They applied to the patient during the surgery, and then they directly exhaust to the atmosphere. And these chemicals around 3,000 to 6,000 times more harmful than CO2. So, for example, healthcare facility in the USA, they are responsible for 10% of the greenhouse gases emission in USA. Study conducted in 2017, as you can see in the chart, that around 50% of the greenhouses emissions comes from operation room. The picture A gonna show the Vancouver General Hospital, and like B shows the University of Minnesota Medical Center. So regarding to this issue, Class 1 created halogenated drug recovery system with short format of HDR to absorb those harmful chemicals, dissolve them, and then liquefy them for the further use. Michael, if you can go to the second slide. So as you can see in the table, this is the hospitals in the Ontario. And based on the number of the ORs, you can see kind of estimation how much tons of CO2 they exhaust to the atmosphere per year. And this calculation is most of these anesthetics are desflurane, sevoflurane, and isoflurane, which you can see desflurane with around 6,000 ECO2 is the most harmful one.
Right, and you've given us a few insights into why don't we use the least damaging one?
It depends on a surgeon preference. They use each of these gases have a specific medical reasons they use them. So that's the reason some surgeons go with desflurane, especially for the children and people with the special health problems. They usually go with the desflurane, and for other patients, they usually go with the sevoflurane. So there is a medical reasons behind that which type of the anesthetic. It depends on the condition of the patient. They use different anesthetics.
Okay, that's helpful. And for everybody's context with this, if we assume, the Canada standard cost or price per ton of carbon is around $50 now, you can see where we're seeing 1,000 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions. That's $50,000 a year is what we're talking about there if we wind up paying for the carbon. Marion, to your knowledge, has the government ever considered charging for the carbon content of these gases? Or I guess the converse is, could we be seeing carbon offsets if you're able to reduce them?
There have been offset programs put in place federally. Some of the provincial governments have opportunities to reject them. So in Ontario in particular, you can actually claim offset credits through an energy emission program, but that's all that's available right now since the change in government. I know that Alberta actually has some offset credit programs. I know in the US, especially California and some of the West Coast states, they have very good offset credit or carbon credit programs actually in place. There is a lot more interest being paid into this. Before COVID happened, there was more communications about some opportunities for organizations to actually claim through an offset program or for halogenated gases or fluorines in particular.
Okay.
So they're just, that's it.
So because the economics of this we have to work through, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. Yeah. One of you going to talk us through that?
Can we not hear the sound here? Oh, I guess not. So this clip is also available on our website with sound as well. So I think one of the big messages of this particular clip is that it's a turnkey operation solution that we have at Class 1, including the service part of the program here. And we plan on rolling it out worldwide as well.
Okay, I really like that video in terms of providing context. Now, how do we?
There we go.
So we're back to the full slide. So talk a little bit then about the economics of this, and as you say, the service. If a hospital takes this on, what does it look like? What's the installation look like? How do you support it? And what kind of costs does the hospital incur? And keeping in mind that if it's 1,000 tons equivalent, maybe it's a $50,000 a year kind of issue. That's the magnitude.
It's Craig here. If the hospitals are getting funding for carbon credits, it'll certainly help offset the capital equipment purchase price. So right now, the hospitals would be responsible to purchase the equipment directly from Class 1. We would do a turnkey installation and then offer a service contract to maintain the equipment, and then do the tank changeout, so it would be a completely hands-off operation by the hospital. Everything would be our responsibility. The cost, well, it would depend on the number of ORs in the hospital, the size, the location, what physical limitations they have at site, where could they install it. There's many variables to figure an exact costing.
But the order of magnitude of first cost, what would that be?
It could be anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000.
And I think you mentioned it can depend on whether the hospital already has anesthetic gas scavenging equipment installed.
Ideally, they can only install this system downstream of an active anesthetic gas scavenging system. So anything that's passive with fan ductwork, you don't have the technology right now to collect the anesthetics from an HVAC system. Okay. So if the hospital did not have an active anesthetic gas scavenging system, which most sites do, there would be additional cost to have that installed in the facility as well.
Okay, that's so your current hospitals. What was the motivation for Vancouver General to step into this?
From my understanding, they wanted to be more green and reduce their carbon footprint. So they were doing an OR renewal project, I think 26 operating rooms. So they were retrofitting, updating, new construction. So this was part of the design to have this halogenated drug recovery system.
Okay, so what's intriguing us in terms of the big picture that we'd like to explore with the panel in just a moment is the idea that we're expecting federal government, I guess federal through the provinces, carbon tax funding to be flowing back to both Ontario and Alberta sometime soon. The idea of part of that being directed towards projects to upgrade the OR ventilation system and including this capability if the government then gives credit to the fact that you're reducing emissions, not just through improved energy efficiency, but also by taking anesthetic gases out of the mix. So that is a suggested project as everybody's preparing for that funding that's coming. Felt like a really interesting possibility where, again, we can make a lot of improvements at one time.
Yeah, depending on what their funding mechanisms are, what dollar values that's coming, they could certainly look at lease to own, long-term, to stretch this out to make sure that they were able to get the equipment in place and still not have money come out of their pocket immediately.
Okay, again, from our perspective, looking at the long-term minimizing greenhouse gas emissions, which we'll have to do, factoring this into every hospital's longer-term capital planning feels like the right thing to do. So thanks to all of you for kind of sharing this perspective. I think it's certainly new to us, and we have some ongoing conversations with you about how we can best fit this in as the story unfolds. So a couple of interesting pieces that we were looking at. Grand River, and Greg is on the panel at the end. The whole hospital. This is just the Kitchener-Waterloo site, Amandeep?
Yes.
Okay. So just for interest, the whole building emits around 5,000 tons a year of CO2 equivalent. The OR ventilation systems are about 10% of that. And the anesthetic gases, as the records we have right now, and I think we want to dig a bit deeper into this, is around 1,100 tons, very similar to the numbers that Marion had shown us earlier. And you play that at $50 a ton, it's about $55,000 a year in place. And Greg, you saw at Grand River has one of these, one of the Class 1 installations that is being used to learn more about the process. So orders of magnitude are interesting. The one that Amandeep will follow up on with Franz, Harry, is looking at the numbers for Grey Nuns Hospital. It's one of Alberta Health's, actually Covenant managed, but Alberta Health's most efficient acute care hospitals. Here are the relative numbers. The whole building is a very energy efficient building, but the emissions numbers are higher because of the electric grid. But the OR ventilation, the anesthetic gases came down by more than a half between 2018 and 2019. And that's a story that we'd like to track with you as to what the potential is for reducing the amount of anesthetic gas, which goes back to the conversation earlier with Mina around how much do surgeons' preferences factor into using more intensive gases and other areas where they could change their minds and use less. So the whole area of reducing the use of anesthetic gases combined with then recovering, that we think is a very productive area of investigation, and we will continue with that and look to incorporate a bit more detail in the guide that comes through. Let's quickly run through a poll. So this is directed because we need to know more about the individual Greening Healthcare hospitals that are participating here. And we're interested, all of the acute care hospitals on the line. There's a number of non-member hospitals. And if you have more than one site, please pick one that you think is kind of representative of what you're about. So we will flip to the poll in just a second. The questions we would like from you are pretty basic. How many operating rooms do you have in the facility? How many of those set back the airflow when they're unoccupied? Is all of them, most of them, or less than 75%, which effectively is there's more work to be done? How often do you conduct airflow testing right now? And what type of ventilation heat recovery do you have within that system? As always, I think Greening Healthcare is very delicate. Everything that we produce is anonymous, so there's no risk with this. But we can better inform the development of this work with your help if we know a little bit more about the individual hospitals. So Michael, do you want to switch the poll on?
Yes, I've started it, so we'll keep it up there for a minute or two, and you can continue.
Okay. And again, this is just acute and ambulatory care hospitals with ORs. So if you're able to quickly fill those things in, and they're nice, simple questions. So that's questions 1 and 2, Michael.
I think because of the time we've got left, we should probably continue. We'll just keep that poll going.
Can we keep 3 and 4 up? Because these are pretty quick, right?
All the questions are available right now.
Okay, so they're seeing more than I am.